Here we go. Hit record, and it is recording.
Great.
Claudia Dawson. Okay, here's the thing about Claudia.
Okay.
I was aware of her probably for like a year and a half before I actually touched base with her. So Claudia works on Recomendo newsletter along with many other things. And what I noticed about Recomendo newsletter is there were always 5 items, and 2 of them, six, thank you.
6.
2 of them often I'd be super interested in. And I'd be like, wow, this is like a real find. This is like an emotional, social, creative find. And the name Claudia Dawson was always underneath. And I was like screen grabbing and sending them on my Instagram, like, great find on Recomendo. And then I was like, wait a second, there is a person behind this, and her name is Claudia Dawson. So then I went onto Twitter, started following her, and I'm like, yep, this is like a fount of information here. And then I took a chance when I wrote Get Out of My Head, and I was like, I'm just going to reach out to her. I'm sure everyone always is, because they always want to be on Recomendo. I'm just going to reach out to her. And I'm going to say, like, any chance I could send you this, only because of your sensibility. I actually hope you like it. And from there,
and I was so excited. Yes, I knew I was gonna love it. I was so excited. I still have it. I gave your pamphlet away. You had a very cute
good. I love
little
that
visual pamphlet. Yes. So I gave that away to my niece.
I love that. It seems like kids love it, by the way. I've like had numerous kids that have like been into that little book.
Yeah. Well,
and so I was so excited, Claudia, because then we got to become friends. Like, we started to get to know each other, and then we got to have a dinner, and we're going to have more dinners. And Claudia is an incredible poet, writer, thinker, like experiencer, person in the world that has had so many different journeys and is continuing, like, journeys of the mind is how I would describe it. So Claudia, I'm just thrilled we get to have this moment together.
Me too.
And I'd love to know, what are you working on these days? Give me a little sense of what's happening in Claudia's world.
Okay. Well, I'm still doing Recomendo every week. So, that's like my 9 to 5, not just I do other things, other newsletters I edit. Personally, I'm also the editor of Phantom Kangaroo, which is a poetry journal I started in 2010 when I was living in Oakland. So there's a new issue of that coming out on June 13th. And last year, I turned that into a print magazine too. Also, so it used to just be online. And then during COVID, I just gave myself more projects to do. And I was like, I really have always wanted to see this in print. And now with like Amazon KDP, you can self-publish, and, it's so easy to just like create your own little books and magazines. So that's my other main project. But lately I've been in like mummy mode.
Maybe because you went out with so many different things, and now you're in this sort of like, it's seasonal. Could it be seasonal where you're sort of,
I think I've shared this with you, and we can talk about it today also, that I do psychedelic therapy.
Yeah. Amazing.
And so I do that. I do these journeys once every 2 to 3 months. And I've been doing that for almost a year and a half now. And the last 2 journeys have just like knocked me inward, where I'm just trying to like process everything. And I've been doing more journaling and meditating and listening to my dreams. And so that feels like that's what's knocked me inward into this like mummy phase that I'm in.
So Claudia, when you say knocked inward, is it like just there's so much there? When I talk to you about these things, I'm always like, I just imagine like this like cave that you walk into, and then there's like a treasure trove inside the cave.
Oh, I love that you just said cave, because I'm going to veer off for a second. I just went to Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico. And have you ever been there? I had
No,
not even heard
I've
of
always
it.
wanted to do New Mexico, like do some trip to New Mexico and explore. Now I know it because I think that in Willa Cather's book, Song of the Lark, maybe there is like a Carlsbad Cavern scene that's very powerful. Anyway,
It's
I just remember
massive.
Willa Cather. Yeah.
It's massive, and it's in the earth, and you just like walk, it's like you walk miles down into the earth, and it's like a cathedral inside. I mean, it's huge. And I was so overwhelmed, and I took all these pictures, and none of them do it justice. Like you have to look at like the National Geographic picture. Like you have to just look at professional photos. But when I was in there, I don't know, something about just like my internal landscape and the caverns, the caves, just like they like merged. And I was like, oh, this is what I'm envisioning inside of me now. Like, and you know, there's a lot of staglamites and staglatites, and they all
Mm-hmm.
have different names. They were all named. And then there's this like pit that they call the abyss. That's just this whole, like, nobody knows how deep it goes into the earth. And you look down into the abyss, and I was looking down there, and I'm like, oh, I have one of those inside of me too. And that's what it like feels like.
That's exact. See, this is what
Yeah.
it's like with Claudia. Like every time I talk to you, I'm just like feeling you. I'm like on a wavelength with you, or I'm like feeling that. And then you always like open it up so much more. I feel like your title should be something like internal astronaut, or there should be some name for like, yeah.
I like psyche archaeologist. I like
Ooh,
that. And
psyche
that's not my, I didn't make that up.
archaeologist.
That I took from this author that I like, Ontero Ali. Like he coined himself like a psyche
Oh,
archaeologist, or he
that's
has a book
cool.
called, and I love it. Or like or consciousness explorer. Like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are there other yous? I don't feel like, I mean, I certainly know people that are sort of experimenting and learning from psychedelics, but I don't know anyone who, maybe because they're not writers too, who go so deep with it as part of their creative practice.
Well, I think mostly, I mean, people do it socially, right? So they're doing it, and their eyes are open, and they're out with friends, and so I haven't had too many, maybe one experience like that. Because the first time I did any psychedelic, it was shrooms, and it was on my birthday when I was camping. And I knew in that moment, the first time I did it, that I didn't want it to be a social experience, because I was like, oh no, this is something wants to come up, like there's a communication happening here, with the universe. Like it's not just hallucinations or imagery, it's like, no, something wants to break through. So I knew, oops, sorry about that. So that's when I started looking into like psychedelic therapy, and thankfully, I found a guide. My talk therapist actually recommended a guide and said, I think this would be good for you. And yeah, I think maybe it's the writer in me that helps me process it, because you do have to do a lot of journaling. There's a lot of integration that's needed in order to benefit from
Yeah,
it.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. How do you feel like it's affected your mental health?
Only pluses. No, nothing, there's no downside.
Yeah. Yeah.
There
Like,
really
can
isn't.
you feel the difference? Like, are you sort of like, okay, I'm dealing with this challenge in my life. Normally this would bring up anxiety or depression or whatever. And
Right.
yeah, how does that work?
It's given me more confidence. And I'm confident that there's a problem, if there's just like, that I can solve it myself. And it's giving me, it's kind of like, so many things have like stemmed from just the psychedelic journey. I mean, I meditate more. I have a lot of coping mechanisms. I'm just like, I feel like I'm collecting all these different ways to like self-soothe and process things. So yeah, I feel rich in that sense. Like those are the treasures, like whatever
Those
helps
are
me.
treasures.
Yes.
Those are treasures. I mean,
Yes.
my dream is, and I hope someday I'll be able to do it, is to like collect the world's coping strategies into a place where, and I probably have already told you about this, Claudia, but like into a, and how in this How We Feel app I've been working on is the first step towards that, but into a place where everyone can sort of vote up what's working for them, so that when you visit it, you get all these new ideas and you see things like sort of bubble up for like grief, and like, here are some of the strategies and new approaches. And that doesn't exist in the world. And it just so should.
No. And it's very, yeah. I mean, there's so many apps, and there's so many like single purpose websites, like I have one like for breathing, like, I need something to like help me, like a visual breathing, assistance. But no, yeah, we need that. You need to work on that.
I'm working on it. Like, I'm working on getting that to be, part of the work. Which I think is great. Tell me about so you're in a mummy state. You have done all of this, right? You're always doing so much writing, I feel like, because I'm always seeing even your newsletter, it's like, here are some big things that I'm working on. Here's a new book that I'm working on. Do you feel like you're sort of in a little bit of a pause on that, or is that?
Yes. But I'm ready. I'm ready. Like, I knew that. So I see my life, because I'm an overthinker, and I have time anxiety. So like, I have a wall calendar, I have a to-do list, I have in my mind, I have a visual calendar at all times. So I see my life in like these monthly segments, and I know what I need. Like, I've learned I know my body, I know my mind. So I know, okay, I just need like the next 2 months to just process things and journal and figure out what's the next thing I want to make or create, or like, in which way do I want to like bloom or flow, because we're cyclical. We're like,
That's true.
yes, it is, like you mentioned earlier, like, is this a seasonal thing? Yes, it is a seasonal thing. Like, and now it's, what is it? So we're working our way towards summer. So I'm like, that's what I feel like. Yeah.
And in terms of the sort of like keeping your you just always seem very inspired to me. And maybe part of that is being a psychonaut. What's it called? Psychic knot?
Psycho. Yes.
Since you're a psychonaut.
Is it a psychonaut? Is that how you pronounce it?
No, it's definitely not.
I've only seen it written, so I don't.
Yeah.
Psychonaut.
But to me, you're living on this sort of edge of like, you just are a very inspiring person to me, because you always are sort of taking in a lot. And when would you say that started for you in your life, where you started was it writing?
Writing has always been like a way to process things. It's like for me, it's like cheap therapy. It's free therapy, journaling and poetry. Like, poetry started when I was young. Actually, before I knew how to write, I was writing. I thought I was writing stories and letters. So for me, language, that's been like, that's my therapy. That's my way to process things. But like, when you mentioned inspired, no, I mean, I go through lulls. Like, not always inspired, but when I'm not inspired, okay. So for me, I think of inspiration, intelligence, intuition, like those three things are like these realms that like I like oscillate between. If I'm not inspired, then I'm consuming a lot of, I'm reading a lot. I'm like,
well, I was also going to say, I mean, you're a curator too. Obviously, that's what I got to know you for. So like, you're finding things in the world through a certain lens, and not that many people are finding things the way you are. In fact, I'm like, how do you find so much? How do you do that, Claudia?
I scan. Okay, so the way I consume like articles and things and websites is it's just as fast as I can. I scan, and whatever like just like wakes up my heart a little bit. Whatever is like, it's like a little like, let me go there, or what's that, or that looks bright and like fun and
it's the
inspiring.
intuition.
Yeah.
It's the sort of
It's the
intuitive
intuition. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting now that I'm thinking about it, like you as an experiencer and everything else is sort of an outcome of you being an experiencer. Like you are like engaged with these things and you're really attuned to the effect that they have. And I, by these things, I mean like things
Life,
you read,
or just
things you
like
see, like
yeah.
going to the caves, like just you're a really engaged person in terms of what you're experiencing. And that engagement is like, I feel something, you know, my body is telling me something. Like that connection seems like that's really there.
Yeah, that probably got that sense. It's like a sense, right? Became more developed with the psychedelic therapy. You know, my memory recall enhanced. Like I can remember. So only, like I was saying earlier, only benefits from it.
So good. It's so good.
But you know, I maybe one downside, and it's not even a downside because I'm grateful for it, is like those moments where it's, you know, something comes up that, you know, makes me feel like I'm in this infinite abyss, something, because you're dealing with a lot of like generational trauma and like childhood trauma and just stuff, things that I've repressed that I haven't realized, you know, just and so every journey is different and you don't know what's going to happen, you know, what's going to come up for you. And after, you know, every journey dismantles you and then you have to put yourself back together again afterwards. So it is work. It's not,
it sounds like,
you know, yeah.
Do you think, like, what's your take on epigenetics? Because weirdly, I know you're not having kids or like you don't plan to, but when I think about the idea of epigenetics is that you have historical trauma expressing itself through your genes. And that can be big or little, the same way like many people experience PTSD in like lots of different ways. And when you describe this processing, I'm like, that to me, this feels like if more people did this, it makes me wonder about their genetic pattern, like their genetic thumbprint. Like, I'm just always like, can you actually heal this epigenetic idea? You know,
I know you can, because I have. My mother is bipolar. My mother was a teenage mother. My mother was also an immigrant. She came, I was born to like a 14-year-old with a lot of trauma already.
Young. Oh my God. It's so
young. Yes. And so there's lots of reasons why I chose not to have children. And it wasn't because I was afraid that I was going to like pass on anything. No. But that's, I
just think of it more. What I was thinking was like, if you were to have a baby, it would be like, oh, I've cleaned up these genes for you, child. Like, here you go. Like, I've worked my ass off to clean up these genes for you.
Yeah. No, definitely.
And then it made me think she doesn't want to have a baby, but like, it's just like this, like idea of like, you're handed whatever you're given when you're born. And then the process of like cleaning up the history or like helping your body process that is just very interesting.
Yeah, no, it is. And I haven't cleaned it up all the way because like I said, something just even recently, I was, I was talking to my talk therapist, and I was processing things and I was realizing that I felt stuck and confused because I had all these voices in my head and then I realized, oh, these are still my parents' voices. These are still, what are they doing in there? I'm an adult woman, like I'm living my own life. And these are not well-informed voices. These are like outdated voices from my childhood. These are like, they're not there now telling me what to do. I've like installed these voices, or I'm still hosting these voices in my head, and they're not well informed and they're out of date and they need to leave. So,
Yeah.
and so it's like, so then it's like, okay, well, how do I do that? And a lot of that is just learning to like slow down, pause, breathe into my body, and not listen to the first voice in my head. And I'm like simplifying it a lot because
But you're
it's
also like teaching yourself, right? It's like this rewiring of the brain and
yeah,
the neuroplasticity. Like, okay, we're
yeah,
going to go through this new path instead. And like, okay, this is the wrong path. We're going to go through this new path instead. And there's something very labor intensive about the rewiring, but it is, you know, eventually it gets easier, but that's pretty intense.
yeah, yeah. It does get easier. It does get
Yeah.
easier. Yeah.
That's super interesting. Claudia, what do you think people, if you could sort of share a basic message for people who are beautiful voyagers, who are sort of like journeying, trying to figure things out, overthinky, like, what would you like people to remember or know based on your own journeys?
You know, I've realized what I think a lot. Okay, what I would say if I could, one message, one bumper sticker message would be like, allow yourself to like be a prism. Like you're not just this one-sided, flattened person. Like there's so many sides to you that you haven't even discovered yet, and that you need to make room to like allow for that to break through because it wants to break through. And I just, and even just recently I realized I'm like, oh, I'm flattening myself. I'm always flattening myself for people because, you know, you see yourself through the way people see you. And so and you're programmed to like, oh, now I'm with this person and this is how I am with this person. And but that's not that's not who you are.
That is so beautiful. Allow yourself to be a prism. I mean, again, talking to a poet, but like, what a beautiful sentiment of sort of reclaiming who you are and the complexity of the self. Like, that's just wonderful. Claudia, you're so wonderful. Why do you have Mona Lisa over your shoulder?
Oh, this is my mother's. She used to live in California, and she left it here in one of her moves, because she's bipolar and she picks up and moves. It's just, that's just her, the way she is. So in one of her moves, you know, and when she's moved, she's always leaving things behind. And, you know, this got left behind. It was in my basement up until a few weeks ago. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to bring it up because she needs to breathe. She needs to come up.
Yeah. She seems happy there.
It's very gaudy.
I love it.
Like
I love it. It's like having sort of this cliche museum experience over your shoulder. But that's still in a museum experience. You know what I mean? There's something like it's like remember your first trip to Europe.
It's a temporary exhibition. It'll go back down. Let's
see. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you might want to talk about?
Gosh. Oh my gosh, we could talk about so many things. We go out and talk about dreams.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. Do you log your dreams? Do you dream every night?
I am married to someone who thinks my interest in dreams is the most boring thing. Like, he is like, there is nothing more boring than talking about dreams. Now, I am infinitely fascinated, as you can imagine. I want my daughter to like, hey, I'm always open for business if you want to talk about your dreams. Like, I'm super interested if you want to talk about your dreams. So I don't write them down, but it doesn't mean I don't think about them. Like, I'm really fascinated with like, what role are they playing? Are they there to allow me to have feelings I wouldn't have had? Like, the ones that are the most striking, there are a couple of things that are striking to me about dreams. One is when you're hit with an emotion that's so big, like anger, the anger coming out at something from like years and years ago, and it kind of overwhelming. That happened to me the other day. This I don't have many things I'm holding on to for my work life, but there was this one person who I thought I was reporting to at a startup, but somebody else actually let me go from the startup. And I was like, what? I thought I was reporting to this other, that's just like startup life. Right.
Yeah.
And that other person who I thought I was reporting to never circled back with me, never said anything, never checked in. And we ended up both working at Pinterest.
This is a dream. Wait, because this sounds like
this is a reality. This is reality.
Okay,
this is reality.
Okay.
This is reality.
Okay.
So we both ended up at Pinterest, right? And I'm super aware of this person.
Uh-huh.
And the other day I looked on LinkedIn and the person had left Pinterest and they went somewhere else. And I had always been aware, like, oh my goodness, I might run into that person. I have a lot of anger, but I wasn't like actively feeling the anger. Mm-hmm. In this dream, Claudia, the anger was so intense, and he was in the dream. And again, he had just like popped up on a LinkedIn. It was just like, like the feed was happening and it popped up. But for whatever reason, my body needed to get that out. Like the anger was so intense. And I was like, well, is this just trying to process the emotions? Or is it like, hey, maybe I should reach out and tell him? Like, what do you take away from it? You know what I mean? Not tell him about the dream, but more like, hey, by the way,
like, connection, like
you never said anything again. And like, if you're still a manager, heads up, don't keep behaving that way. Like, yeah.
So what did you do? Did you process
Nothing.
it? Did you? No.
I mean, I did spend some time being aware of it, definitely meditated and sort of like was aware of it before. And I don't even want to say thinking about it. That's like, I'm intentionally saying aware of it because it's different than thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't like, I'm going to parse this with my overthinky brain. It was like, I'm going to be aware of this feeling and just allow it to sort of be there during the meditation. Just, that's the thing I'm sort of aware of. I don't know. So that's one thing. These like emotions coming out.
But you did the right thing. That's the first is yes, right. Not taking it literally, not jumping back into like that emotional state. Like now I have to live in this emotional state.
Right.
It was in my dream and that's what it was. But just noticing and like meditating with it. And that's basically like what I, when I tell my friends, I just say, just let's try carrying our dreams throughout the day.
Yes.
Because
that's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Because when I'm sleeping, that's when I feel, that I'm awake, actually. That's when I'm actually connected to my internal landscape. That's when, and you can become better at dreaming and you can.
Oh, I agree. I have worked on that too. Yeah. And the other thing, so the emotions are the one thing. And the second thing that I'm fascinated by is revisiting places, and they look different in the dream, but I revisit them. So for example, my university, like there is a version of my university that is my dream university. And it doesn't look at all like what my actual university experience was. And there are these, I can physically imagine what it feels like and looks like. Doesn't look like my real university. I can imagine like what going to this other neighborhood near the university was like. Doesn't look like the neighborhood. Like it's reoccurring. Same with my childhood home. Doesn't really look like the childhood home, but like, and there's something about this distorted, it's like a funhouse mirror experience of the past informed by emotions, I guess. It's just really interesting. Like, for example, I did not love my university. It was a beautiful place, didn't love it. And when I go into the funhouse mirror, it's got a lot of like dark alleyways and dark, strange, confused, rooming situations where I'm in with like people I don't know in this room. And is this where I'm supposed to be sleeping? And like, just lots of strange things like that.
You just reminded me of a dream. One rule I have about dream like sharing is that like I don't ever try to interpret people's dreams, and I don't, like you can't interpret other people's dreams. You have to, but I'm like getting better at learning the language of my own dreams and the meaning, you know, just by noticing and being aware and writing it down. And because, you know, the same stuff will just keep coming up over and over again. But I had a dream recently where I was in a space, I was in a house, and I was clearing space. Like I was, with like sage and like tingshaws and just like clearing the energy of rooms. But I was in this one room and there were other people, and it just kept getting crowded. Like more and more people kept entering. And in the dream, I became kind of lucid, and I was like, there are so many other freaking rooms in this house that I need to be exploring. And I knew then, I was like, okay, this is not just like this place that I'm in is not just a house with like, I'm not really in this room. These are like rooms in my mind. These are like the mansions of my mind. Like there is so much more to explore.
Oh, cool.
Let me get out of this room and go explore the other rooms. And so your university, when you were talking about it, I was, in the alleys, the dark alleys.
Did it get you? And were you able to move to a different room?
Not in the dream. See, not in the dream, but I don't think I carry them throughout the day, and I will do like visual meditations where I like re-enter the dream, and I'm like, well, what do the other rooms look like?
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that, because I will do that, but I've never had words for it, of like visually revisit. I mean, this place, this university experience, like I've never really tried to articulate it, but that's your point about the journaling.
You should meditate
on
it. You should go down those dark alleys.
Yeah.
Like what's down these dark, like what did I leave behind at this university? What's down?
That's so cool.
Why is
Claudia.
this place so, yeah.
I love that.
You ask yourself more questions. I would wonder why.
It's very cool. Do you have like a dream project that, I mean, I bet you have like 1,000, but like, what is a project that you're like, if someday someone gave me the money, I would manifest this thing? What is that for you?
A couple of things. One, I want to grow Phantom Kangaroo. It's just me. This, poetry journal is just me. And it's like, it doesn't make any money. It's like it costs me money to make, but it's my passion project, and it's been like that for a while. And that feels very like alive and real to me. Like Phantom Kangaroo is like, it's, some people like to say their art or is like their child, but for me, it's like this, it's like a universe.
Oh, cool.
So I might but this requires time, which, requires, money and freedom.
Hence the time anxiety, right? Back to the time anxiety.
Yeah. I think what keeps coming up for me, what I've noticed in dreams and meditations and in my journals, is that I always go back to Phantom Kangaroo, and I'm like, there's something there for me. That's it's an outlet, but it's also like a community for me, because I only publish like surreal, mystical, spiritual poetry. So it's like, that's just, that's my little,
that's so cool.
Universe.
Well, I'm definitely going to link to it.
Thank you.
What else? What is another, or you said I have 2.
Oh, I mean, I would love to like dream. Okay, dream. Like I would love to like make a cartoon, like animate something.
Oh God, I love that. I love that. And is it like you would want to do all of it, or you would want to work with somebody? You do the drawings.
I can't draw. Yeah, I can't. I mean, no.
So would it be
draw.
like,
so
you would like write a script and find somebody who's like an illustrator and then animate?
Yeah.
God, isn't that amazing? Oh,
and it's doable.
It's like so doable. But imagining like these ideas that take numerous creative people working together, it like that'd be amazing. That would be just amazing to get together people to be like, that's like dream. If you had a lot of money, would be like, let's create this thing. And this is how I imagine it feeling. And let's like work together to bring it to life. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I feel just saying it out loud, because no one's asked me that before. So that's like that's been like,
oh my God, I love that, Claudia. So cool.
So just saying it out loud to you, like, I just felt like it's like a kick in the butt. It's like, well, now you said it out loud, so you got to do something about it. So, thank you.
Good. I mean, even if it's just like bringing it into the room for the next few years, and then maybe it starts to move forefront, and that's so cool. I think somebody described them as like kites up in the air. Like you have like all these different kind of kites at different levels, and
Do you remember the post-it recommendo that I wrote about? It's like, and this I took from a blog. Like someone had written, like, take a stack of like 100 post-its and write down your hunt, like just dreams, every dream, everything, anything you want. And I did it. I have like a.
Oh my God.
I separated them, and then so I did it. I did like 100 post-its, and then I organized them in order of like, well, maybe I can do this in like 3 months. Maybe I can do this in like 5 years. And
I love it. And I bet new ones are going to enter the picture too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I should.
Claudia, I have loved this time with you so much.
Are we done?
We're done.
That was so fast. It goes by so fast.
It goes by so fast when you get to talk to somebody freaking brilliant that you're totally inspired by. Which there are very few people, I think I told you this when I met you, that I was like, I am going to meet someone I have admired from afar. I think because I'm so picky about like feeling like someone is really bringing something authentically new to the world. Like I'm often like, yeah, your work is sort of a replica of these other, but you, I feel like, are a true individual.
Oh, I talk about you all the time to whoever, like if I haven't, I'm like, oh, and I was so excited about this. And I'm like, and the way I describe you is like, she's just like really alive, like so alive.
Thank you for feeling that. Because sometimes I feel that too. I'm like, I just am very excited about this. Like, why do I have so much energy and I'm so excited? But like, it's just like part of my nature.
I love you. I love
you too.
No, we have to do dinner soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to stop recording now. Goodbye, everyone. I'm sorry you don't get Claudia all the time.